Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip quietly into a world that could have been, but wasn't. A world that might look familiar at first. Trains run on time. Streets are clean. People keep their heads down and their voices lower. But something's off. No smartphones, no emojis, no YouTube, except for the government's channel, of course. And that distant hum in the air? It's not just traffic. It's something more ominous. You're about to fall asleep inside a timeline where Hitler didn't lose. Where the war didn't end in 1945, not really. Where the world you know never got built because another one took its place. Cold. Efficient. Terrifyingly quiet. You probably won't survive this alternate history. Not because it's full of action, on the contrary. It's the stillness that gets you. The constant need to pretend. To smile. To be small. And worst of all, to believe. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I always love seeing that in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in 1952. You think it's Berlin, but the map calls it Waldhauptstadt, Germania. The war never ended. Or rather, it ended the wrong way. The invasion of Normandy, Operation Overlord, was crushed on the beaches by elite panzer divisions and Luftwaffe superiority. London was bombed into quiet submission shortly after. Churchill vanished into obscurity, a failed old man with no war to win. And Stalin? Gone. A Kremlin coup or cyanide? Historians still argue whether it was treachery or timing. The United States, watching from across the Atlantic, never fully joined. A few ships sank in the Atlantic. Congress hesitated. Isolationists clapped. And Roosevelt died before momentum could turn. And you? You were born into this. Into a world where the Nazi flag stretches from Brittany to the Balkans, and across the globe in strange, strangled shadows. This morning, you don't go to school, you report to your youth office. Uniform pressed, boots polished, you salute the poster of the Führer that still hangs like a shrine above the stairwell. A boy in your building was caught making a joke about it last week. No one's seen him since. Everything smells faintly of iron and boiled cabbage. The ration bread is thin and grayish. You chew slowly. It's the only thing in your stomach, and the day's barely begun. Out the window, you see banners, red, black, white. They ripple gently, pretending to be festive. The Reich loves festivals. They keep people busy. Quiet. Distracted. You shuffle past the kiosk selling Victory Cola. It's bitter and flat, but you buy one anyway, just for the ritual. The clerk doesn't speak. No one does much, unless they're quoting from Der Sieg ist ewig, The Victory is Eternal. It's the only book still published in mass print, other than party pamphlets and old Germanic fairy tales, heavily edited, of course. A loudspeaker crackles. Somewhere in the distance, a marching band starts playing. Not for fun, though. A diplomat is arriving today. From Argentina. They say the southern hemisphere still has contested zones. You've seen the forbidden maps. They're covered in smudges and blank spaces. You cross the street when a convoy of black cars whirs by. Everyone freezes. Even birds stop flapping. Then they pass, and the world breathes again. Just a little. It's strange, really. The Reich won the war, but lost the joy. There are no happy parades. Only processions. No street art. Just murals of muscle and discipline. Historians still argue whether Hitler planned this total stillness, or whether the system outgrew its creator. Some believe he died in 1948, but the party simply didn't announce it. Others say he lives on, half machine, in a compound under the Alps, visited monthly by his inner circle. You'd laugh, but the last person who did is no longer listed on the housing rolls. There are whispers, though, about how things used to be. How once, people danced in nightclubs and wore jeans and ate food that came from other countries. You're not even sure what a taco is, but it sounds like rebellion. You walk past an old woman sitting alone on a bench. Her coat is frayed. Her shoes have been repaired too many times. She hums something under her breath, an old English lullaby, maybe. You want to ask her where she learned it, but you keep walking. Safer that way. You pass a bookstore. It's mostly empty. Behind the counter, a teenager pretends to dust shelves that haven't held real books in years. One corner has approved literature, but most of it is biographies of mid-tier party officials or heavily censored editions of Shakespeare. Hamlet ends with a promotion. Macbeth never questions authority. And always, the portraits. Everywhere. Stern, idealized faces, men with chiseled jaws and vacant smiles, women holding blonde children, always gazing upward, like hope can be mandated. You round the corner and arrive at the registry office. You're here for your monthly compliance check. Blood test. Loyalty review. Subtle threats wrapped in polite bureaucracy. You hand over your passbook. The officer behind the desk scans it, looks at your shoes, then your eyes. He nods once and waves you on. You feel lucky. Which is absurd. Outside, the clouds hang low and heavy. Gray, like everything else. You catch your reflection in a window. You barely recognize yourself anymore. Not because you've changed, but because the world has never allowed you to become someone. Still, you keep walking. You always do. What else is there? The train station looms ahead, all marble and menace. Giant eagle sculptures, stone soldiers with blank stares, and banners twice your height. You check your schedule. The next train to the Western Integration Zone leaves in 15 minutes. You've never been there, but you've read the sanitized travel guides. Industrial parks. Model villages. Happy citizens. You're not sure who writes the testimonials. You doubt they live there. As you step onto the platform, a voice booms overhead, announcing something in clipped, formal German. You don't understand most of it. Doesn't matter. You've learned to move when others move and stop when others freeze. That's how you survive here. And yet, something flickers in your chest. Some sliver of memory, genetic, maybe, of a world where people made their own coffee, wore colorful socks, and said things like, "I disagree," without disappearing. Maybe it's a dream. Or maybe it's just history, trying to whisper itself back into your ears. The train pulls into Germania's central station with a whirring sigh and a hiss of brakes. It's massive. Not just big, absurdly big. Designed by Albert Speer himself, back when he was still Hitler's favorite architect. You step off the platform and into a vaulted hall so grand it almost feels like a parody of itself. The ceilings are cathedral high, the columns thicker than tree trunks, and the flagpoles never stop swaying. Your footsteps echo as you walk beneath mosaics that glorify eternal victory, the unity of blood, and order above all. You've seen them so many times, they barely register. Still, something in your body flinches when you pass the mural of a globe wrapped in a swastika. The air smells like stone polish and fear. Clean but sharp. Artificial. There are no beggars. No buskers. No one selling gum or asking for change. Just security patrols and commuters who walk with purpose and silence. You head toward the exit, past towering brass gates engraved with quotes from Mein Kampf, edited of course. Sanitized for civilian inspiration. A propaganda kiosk near the escalator offers tiny white pamphlets with bold red titles like The Joy of Obedience and Racial Harmony Through Order. You don't take one. No one does. But they're always restocked. Outside, the sky is trying to be blue but doesn't quite manage. The buildings rise around you like monuments to repression, marble cubes, steel domes, and brutalist towers, all symmetrical, all unyielding. There's no graffiti, no ads, no neon. Just government slogans carved directly into the walls. Tomorrow belongs to us. The strong do not question. You walk along the plaza known as Adolf Hitler Forum, a space so wide and sterile it gives you vertigo. Designed to host a 1,000,000-person rally, though no one gathers here anymore except for official ceremonies and maybe the occasional school parade. Today, a single cleaning drone buzzes across the pavement like a lost beetle. You glance up and see the crown jewel of Germania, the Volksschau. Or as they call it now, the Great Dome. Bigger than the Capitol in Washington. Supposedly taller than the pyramids. A sphere of stone and iron that houses the offices of the Central Command, the Council of Aryan Integrity, and whatever's left of Hitler's inner circle, assuming any of them are still alive. Rumors say the dome leaks. That the structure is so massive, its own weight is cracking it from the inside. But no one ever confirms that. Cracks are treason. You pause at the reflecting pool across from the dome. It's meant to symbolize national purity. It's empty. Just still water and your own face looking back at you, distorted by ripples that weren't there a second ago. As you keep walking, you notice the statues lining the boulevard. Giants. Mythic figures from a reimagined Europe. Teutonic knights, philosopher kings, and Aryan supermoms holding identical babies aloft like Olympic torches. Every one of them carved from pristine white marble. Every one of them facing west. You pass a memorial that looks like a victory arch, but is actually a mausoleum. Inside lie the bones of the martyrs of the failed uprising, the Nazis' way of referring to the Allied resistance. There's a wall covered in names. Not the names of the fallen, but of the executioners. Celebrated. Decorated. Immortalized in stone. Historians still argue whether the Allies ever truly stood a chance after D-Day failed. Some claim the Soviets might have held the line longer if not for internal sabotage. Others say the US could have joined earlier, if not for the Lindbergh presidency, and a population too tired from the Great Depression to fight someone else's war. You pause at a bench under a tree. Not a real tree. Genetically engineered, designed to bloom year-round, its petals too perfect to be comforting. A family walks past. The mother gives you a cautious glance, then tightens her grip on her son's hand. He's wearing a miniature brown uniform. His armband reads, Level 2 Initiate. He can't be older than 8. Your stomach tightens. You remember something you saw once, hidden under a floorboard in a condemned building, a crumpled photograph of Times Square, filled with color and chaos and people dancing in the street. V-Day. Someone had scrawled on the back in blue pen. There are no dancing crowds here. Only lines. You approach a checkpoint at the edge of the Central District. The officer barely looks at you. Scans your wrist tag. Waves you through. Behind him, a small screen plays a loop of Unity News. A woman with glossy hair reports that agricultural output has exceeded quota. A man in a gray suit smiles while touring a model orphanage. You think about how quiet it is. No dogs barking. No radios blaring music. No arguments. Just the sound of regulated footsteps and the occasional drone buzz. You reach the outer ring of the city where the architecture shifts from monstrous to merely oppressive. Rows of worker housing, square, clean, identical. People mill about in silence. You see no trash, no laughter, and no playgrounds. Just sterilized routine. At a corner stall, a man is selling artificial fruit. You recognize him. He used to be a literature teacher, before the curriculum changed and novels were replaced with party memoirs. Now he pushes nutrient packs and synthetic apples. You nod. He doesn't nod back. There's a museum here, the Hall of Eternal Order. You once took a mandatory tour. Inside, displays explain how The West was lost to decadence. And how? Peace was achieved through purity. A wax figure of Churchill lies in a fake courtroom, arms raised in surrender. Children are encouraged to spit on it. Near the entrance, you saw something once, a small plaque, almost hidden. It read, "Warning, artifacts inside may contain subversive ideas." You never found them. The day drags on, and you realize you're exhausted, and it's not even noon. It's the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. Not from activity, but from constant pretending. And yet, as you walk past a mirror-tiled wall, you catch your reflection again. You still look normal, healthy, clean. But behind your eyes something flickers. A dull ache for a world you've never known. A memory of a freedom that isn't yours. A shadow of what could have been. You wake up before dawn. Not because you want to. No one wakes naturally anymore. But because your flat's wall unit buzzes with the pre-alarm tone that means state broadcasting begins in 5 minutes. It's not optional. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and stand up. The floor is cold, but that's normal. Heat rations are stricter this year, even in the capital. Your apartment is part of a block known as Stamblock 73A. No one knows what happened to 72. The mirror on your wall flickers to life as you wash your face. A voice greets you with practiced warmth. "Guten Morgen, comrade. You are living in year 12 of victory. Strength through order. Please remember your quota responsibilities." Then, it begins to list the news: increased steel production in the Urals, a new motorway link in the Algerian Protectorate, a birth rate rise in Reichsland, Poland. You aren't really listening. You never are. But you pretend to nod thoughtfully, just in case. In the kitchen, though it barely deserves that name, you open your pantry. There's bread substitute, synthetic spread, and a sealed tin of caffeine tablets. The coffee is a grayish powder labeled Brewed Endurance. It smells like burnt pennies. You spoon it into hot water and drink it without complaint. You're used to it now. The taste no longer surprises you. It's part of the morning ritual. Bitter liquid, radio hum, neutral expression. Outside the window, the city is beginning to stir. Buses trundle down assigned routes. Workers queue neatly at collection points. Uniforms are ironed, buttons fastened. Everything gleams, but not with joy. With pressure. Maintenance of the image. You get the feeling the buildings themselves might report you if you slack. You brush your teeth. The toothpaste is government issue, and tastes like mint and chalk. Above your sink hangs a small poster of a smiling family. Mother, father, 2 children, all blonde, all in matching uniforms. The slogan below reads, "A clean mouth is a loyal mind." That's not even the weirdest one. The week before, you saw a billboard near the train station that said, "Smile correctly, inward and upward." What that means is still up for debate. Historians still argue whether such phrases were meant to pacify the masses or simply confuse them into compliance. You put on your jacket, regulation gray, and fasten your loyalty pin. It's not made of metal, just plastic, but everyone wears it. Not wearing it is a quiet act of war. And you are not at war. Not yet. The hallway outside your flat is immaculate. Not because someone cleans it, but because no one dares mess it up. Even the light bulbs are standard issue, and they hum just slightly off-key, as if reminding you, this is not your home. This is your assigned space within the machine. As you walk outside, you pass a neighbor, Mrs. Gruner. She gives you the approved half-smile and tilts her head precisely 15 degrees. The manual for civic interaction outlines this as the proper morning greeting. She doesn't know your name, and you don't know hers. Safer that way. Your identification card clicks against the access reader at the corner post. The screen lights up green. You're allowed to proceed to the tram. You board without speaking. Inside, there's a screen playing pre-recorded Happy citizen interviews. A young man beams as he explains how much he enjoys contributing to regional production metrics. A woman claps rhythmically at the unveiling of a new granite statue in Bucharest. None of it feels real. Even the clapping is too evenly timed. The tram glides past a row of residential towers. Every floor has the same number of windows, each with approved curtain color and length. Some have indoor plants. You wonder how they manage that. Plants aren't exactly encouraged. Too chaotic. Too alive. The announcer's voice interrupts your thoughts. Please remember, today is Obedience Reflection Day. All workplaces will observe a 2-minute silence at 10 a.m. Remain still. Remain thankful. You will. Of course you will. The tram stops at Sector Office 18. You step off with others, men, women, even children, all in uniform shades of gray, blue-gray, or off-white. You enter the processing center where your daily role assignment awaits. Today, you're scheduled for municipal document sorting. Again. You scan your pass and are handed a clipboard by a woman with laminated eyes. She thanks you for your loyalty. You say nothing. That's the proper answer. In the workroom, everything is beige. The air smells like ink and stillness. You take your seat, open the first folder, and begin your task, sorting population compliance records. Most are clean. A few have flags, errors in form, inconsistent language, missed quotas. These get marked for follow-up. You never ask what follow-up means. At precisely 10 o'clock, the lights dim slightly, and a soft bell chimes. Everyone stops. 2 minutes. No motion. No speech. No blinking too loudly. You try not to think. But your brain doesn't cooperate. You imagine, for just a flicker, what a real workplace might look like. With coworkers who gossip. With birthday cakes. With background music that isn't a state-approved string quartet in minor key. Quaint, ridiculous ideas. But you think them anyway. The bell rings again. Work resumes. The moment evaporates. You finish your shift around 1500 hours. You don't talk to anyone. You don't need to. You scan out, walk to the tram, and ride in silence. You pass an old man on a bench reading a blank newspaper. Well, not blank, exactly. Just edited into blandness. All the articles are statements. Nothing ever questions. Nothing surprises. You make a mental note to keep your dreams quiet tonight. The wall units can hear more than you think. At home, dinner is a packet of protein stew number 3, and a slice of something that claims to be cheese. You eat it slowly, staring at the flickering screen that shows a parade from somewhere in Reichsland, Italy. People march in sync. Flags wave. No one smiles with their eyes. Before bed, you log your daily compliance check. Woke up on time. Attended assigned labor. Observed obedience reflection. Ingested complete nutrition. No deviant media accessed. You hit submit. It pings green. You are, for now, a good citizen. The lights dim automatically. Your wall unit plays a lullaby based on Wagner, reorchestrated to encourage neural tranquility. And you lie there, staring at the ceiling, trying not to wonder what it would feel like to choose your own toothpaste, or your own music, or your own thoughts. You probably won't survive this alternate world, but you're surviving in it. For now. The school is called Reichsbildungszentrum 4, but everyone just refers to it as the Cube. Because that's exactly what it looks like, a gray cement block with no ornamentation, no windows on the lower floors, and no laughter drifting out into the morning air. You walk through the front gates, where a black uniformed officer greets students by scanning their identification tags. A small mechanical arm checks bags for unregulated materials, basically anything not on the ministry's approved list. Once, A kid tried to bring in a homemade sketchbook. That was the last time anyone saw him. The hallway smells like disinfectant and dustless air. Too clean, too dry, like the building is trying to erase the scent of human presence. Fluorescent lights buzz softly above, casting everyone's skin in a slightly bluish hue, like you're walking through a hospital that's forgotten what hope is. Class starts promptly at 7 o'clock. You sit at your desk, metal frame, hard seat, no padding, and open your slate. There are no pens. Everything is typed, monitored, and stored in the ministry's cloud archive. They say it's for efficiency. You know it's so your thoughts can be traced. The teacher, Frau Lieber, enters. She doesn't smile. She never does. Her glasses flash coldly in the light, and she begins without greeting. Today's lesson, the failure of democracy. You exhale slowly. She clicks a remote, and a massive screen behind her flickers to life, displaying a chart that compares the decay of American institutions with the rise of Aryan stability. The words sound official, the numbers neat. The logic? Fabricated, but cleanly so. She lectures with mechanical precision. Phrases like inevitable collapse, racial degeneracy, and heroic unity are repeated until your brain starts to go numb. You know the drill. Nod occasionally, look interested, don't blink too often. The algorithm might interpret disengagement as internal conflict. You glance around the room. Most students are doing the same, performing attention. A few, always the same ones, are genuinely alert. Not out of curiosity, but loyalty. They sit straighter. Their hair is neater. Their screens flash with notes. You know they'll submit voluntarily later. Historians still argue whether this generation truly believes what they're taught, or whether they've simply learned to never question it. The result, either way, is the same: silence. The history module ends, and next comes cultural hygiene. A euphemism, really, for what used to be called literature or philosophy. Today's lesson? The dangers of unstructured thought. You scroll through a series of slides comparing approved storytelling, grim fairy tales, sanitized folk epics, with problematic narratives, Shakespeare, Dostoevsky, Orwell. The names of the forbidden authors flash red on your slate. You're supposed to memorize the list, not to read them, but to recognize threats. One slide shows an image of a young woman reading on a park bench, captioned, "Curiosity kills loyalty." A quiet joke stirs in your mind, then loyalty must be very fragile. You swallow it before it leaves your throat. During the midday break, you head to the courtyard. It's a square of concrete with a few benches and one government-approved wellness tree. It doesn't provide shade, but it photographs well during propaganda tours. You sit beside a friend, if you can call him that, named Matthias. You don't talk about real things. No one does. But you sometimes exchange looks that feel heavier than words. He leans in, voice low. They added new sensors to the reading room. Thermal. Even the old ones can't hide anymore. You nod. It's all you can do. A girl from another class walks past with a forced grin. Her uniform is spotless, her boots polished. She's one of them. The kids who genuinely want to rise in the party. She'll probably be promoted to youth division speaker before the year is out. She used to draw flowers on her sleeves. Now she reports kids for whispering. After lunch, nutrient squares and mineral broth, you have biological responsibility. A class taught by a former military officer who calls everyone recruit. Today's topic: hereditary integrity and the preservation of racial harmony. You don't listen too closely. You already know what he'll say. Diagrams of DNA, charts of facial proportions, and endless praise for selective pairing. You've seen the posters, couples chosen by algorithm, not affection. Love, in this world, is considered reckless. You remember hearing once, probably whispered in a condemned building, that before the war, people used to fall in love without state approval. They kissed in the rain. They wrote poems. Now, relationships are pre-approved based on bloodline scores and career potential. Compatibility reports arrive with your promotion paperwork. The teacher pulls up a photo of ideal offspring. Blonde child. Strong jaw. Fixed gaze. You've seen that same face 100 times. Different names, same features. It's as if the state is cloning the idea of a person more than the person themselves. There's a murmur in the back of the classroom. A boy sneezes without raising his sleeve. Eyes dart. The teacher glances up. The boy's name gets typed into a ledger. No punishment yet, just a record. Records are worse. They follow you forever. The final period of the day is global geography. You expect the usual: maps with renamed countries, rewritten borders, and missing nations. But today, there's something different. The instructor, Hervas, speaks in a monotone. This is the Antarctic Alliance, he says, pointing to a glowing blue zone on the map. A remnant of non-aligned resistance. Considered an ecological risk zone and ideologically hostile territory. Someone raises a hand. Not to challenge, just to ask what the temperature is down there. The teacher pauses. Then says with chilling softness, "Cold. Very cold. Like betrayal." The class goes silent. You walk home alone. The tram is delayed, something about a security sweep. So you take the long route through the cultural quarter. It used to be a theater district. Now it's just facades, buildings repurposed as state museums or document centers. You pass one that still has the old letters faintly visible under the new signage, Kino Royale. The windows are dark, but you swear you see movement behind one. You keep walking. Back home, you upload your academic summary. Attendance, scores, compliance. Everything marked. You click through without emotion. Just numbers. Just survival. You lie in bed, eyes open, listening to the wall unit hum its night mode. It plays soft frequencies designed to promote loyalty dreams. You hear them every night. But sometimes, just before you drift off, you hear a voice that sounds suspiciously like your own say something dangerous. This is all wrong. And then, mercifully, sleep. The world map on your wall is official issue, standardized by the Ministry of External Affairs and printed on polymer to prevent unauthorized modification. You stare at it sometimes, wondering how much of it is true. North America looks distorted. Not in shape, but in shading. The United States is shown in 3 colors: gray for the isolation zone, blue for the transitionary Allied states, and a deep, ominous red for contested sectors. Canada is a vague neutral blot marked pending classification. Mexico is barely labeled at all, just a faded phrase, former territory of interest. You reach out and touch the eastern seaboard, New York, Washington, Boston. In this world, they're not exactly rubble, but they're not themselves either. The official narrative says these cities are under cultural quarantine. What that means depends on who you ask. Historians still argue whether the United States truly resisted or quietly fractured. Some believe an internal coup split the country in two. Others think the Nazi regime succeeded in infiltrating the media and slowly shifting public opinion. A few point to the 1944 U.S. elections as the moment things turned. One fringe theory says Roosevelt was assassinated earlier than reported. His double just carried out the last months of his presidency in secret. You sit on the edge of your bed and wonder, if you're born in the Reich, but dream of somewhere else, what does that make you? Your curiosity gets the better of you. You power on your black market receiver. It's hidden in a hollowed-out book, approved sayings of the Führer. You twist the dial slowly, careful not to trigger the signal sweeps that scan for rogue frequencies. Static. 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 Then something. A faint jazz riff. Tinny, low quality, but unmistakable. You lean in. A voice crackles through the hum, speaking English. Not the stilted, rehearsed kind the ministry actors use, but real English. Loose, alive, a little too fast. And that was Duke Ellington, coming to you from the Free States Network. Hold tight, folks, we've got updates from the Texas line next. Resistance Radio stays on all night long. Your pulse quickens. You can't record this. That would be suicide. But you listen. You let every word soak in like forbidden fruit. Apparently, there are still regions in the U.S. that never fell. Places where militias hold out in the Rockies. Where communities in Northern California build secret libraries. Where New Orleans still plays live music. The South, you're told, fractured differently. Some states willingly adopted aspects of fascism, forming transitional governments that mimic the Reich's language. Others are lawless. No-go zones, as the Reich calls them. But to the voice on the radio, they're hopeful case. He signs off. This is Sam from Baton Rouge, and I still believe in messy freedom. Good night. You click the dial off and sit there in the dark. The glow of the receiver fades slowly. The official story says America realized the futility of resistance after Europe fell. That they signed the Atlantic Stability Pact to prevent further bloodshed. That the American people chose order over confusion. But you've heard other things. You've read rumors that the CIA fought from underground bunkers well into the 1960s. That Roosevelt's daughter smuggled documents through Canada. That a city called Detroit became the hub of a rebellion, before being turned to ash. The Reich doesn't talk about the U.S. unless it's to mock them. Their movies portray Americans as weak, gluttonous, childlike. Cartoons depict them as greedy fools needing German discipline. But you've seen the contraband. Old comics. Magazines. A VHS taped once. Star Wars, dubbed into Polish, subtitles scrawled by hand. You couldn't stop watching it. The idea that rebels, even fictional ones, could fight an empire and win? That was dangerous magic. You remember the character, Princess Leia, saying, "The more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers." You hid the tape, of course. Then burned it. But it burned slowly, like it didn't want to disappear. You pull on your boots and leave the building. It's late, but the sky is still light. The Reich controls time zones now, stretching daylight for productivity. Nightfall is inefficient, they say. You walk the long way around your district, passing a building labeled Cultural Re-Education Annex inside. Flickering light leaks through the windows. You hear faint audio, voices repeating mantras. They call it cognitive alignment. No one ever comes out looking the same. Further on, a wall displays posters with maps. One shows South America as a stabilized territory, but everyone knows Argentina is where the top brass fled when things got messy. You've even heard some claim Hitler himself escaped there, though the official story places him in a sealed chamber under the Alps, awaiting final ascension. Take your pick of myths. You pass a park, empty, geometrically perfect, the grass too green. Hidden speakers play state-approved music, Wagner, Liszt, nationalist orchestras that sound like marching feet set to violins. You pause at a bench shaped like an eagle. You sit and pull out a worn pamphlet someone once passed you, folded and refolded until the creases have creases. It's titled, The Other America. Inside are photos, grainy, smuggled, precious. A black jazz trio on a street corner. A protest march in Chicago. A mixed-race couple holding hands. The last page says only, "We are not all gone. You are not alone." You look up. A drone hums overhead. You slip the paper back into your coat. You sit still, hands in your lap, just another loyal citizen taking a rest. but your heart beats to the rhythm of another place. Another idea. One that's banned here. A place where no one checks your papers at school. Where stories don't have to be approved. Where the future still belongs to its people. The Reich thinks it has rewritten the world. But it hasn't found a way to delete longing. You're standing at the public news board, pretending to read the day's headlines. Pretending because you know they're all the same: victories, quotas, harmony, and more victories. The pictures are glossy, the fonts uniform, the language deeply uninspired. The real story lies in what's missing. No mention of Africa. None. Not even a footnote. On the official map, it's labeled as Zentralafrikanischer Raum, Central African Territory, but it might as well say here be nothing. It's as though the entire continent was gently folded under a blanket and never spoken of again. You tap the page showing record agricultural success in the Sudan integration zone, and try not to roll your eyes. You've seen photos, secret ones. Dust, fences, towers. Integration zone, in this context, might mean something closer to mass incarceration. Historians still argue whether the Afrika Korps intended to colonize the entire continent, or simply extract its resources. The most chilling theory? They did both, and automated most of it. Machines, not men, now enforce order. Mining bots. Pesticide drones. Heat-resistant mech tractors that don't ask questions. A girl once told you she found a map, hand-drawn, smuggled, showing cities in the Congo that had been turned into testing zones. For what, she didn't say. You never saw her again. Asia hasn't fared better. Japan remains a strategic co-hegemon, which is Reich speak for. We tolerate them because they're useful. Tokyo is a city of neon order, rebuilt in Nazi image. Its culture stripped to the bones. Anime, video games, street fashion, all erased. The samurai now wear brown armbands and speak of honor through alliance. The Pacific is a quiet battlefield. Australia too remote? The Reich broadcasts that it's a loyal Aryan offshoot. But you've heard whispers of Aboriginal rebel cells. Guerrilla radio reports mention the firelines, a ragtag resistance of poets, hackers, and ex-military dropouts who communicate with smoke signals and pirated satellites. And then there's the Middle East. The maps show a huge neutral-colored blob with only one word: restricted. No news. No data. No population numbers. Just an assumption that it exists, controlled in silence. You once met an old man who claimed to be from Tehran. His stories were full of color, saffron, pistachios, crowded bazaars. But his eyes had gone gray, like the Reich had taken the hues away. Latin America? Carved up. Argentina remains an open secret, a sanctuary for former SS officers and their families. Buenos Aires is sometimes called Little Munich. Its streets cleaner than clean, its bakeries oddly German. Tourists aren't allowed. Not that anyone here can leave. Brazil is different. A jungle of conflicting reports. The Reich says it's pacified. Pirate radio stations say it's alive with rebels. One story claims an entire Amazonian city is camouflaged beneath the trees, hidden from satellites, powered by stolen tech. You walk along the boulevard, past a monument called the Unity Column. At the base are inscribed the words: one world, one voice, one will. But you know better. You've seen too many anomalies. In cafes, you spot people whispering in languages that don't appear in the official index. You've heard schoolchildren hum unfamiliar melodies under their breath, something not from the Reich's approved lullaby list. Even food betrays the illusion. A corner vendor once handed you something round and spicy and alive. When you asked what it was, he just winked. From Thailand, he said. You'd never even seen Thailand on the map. The global web of the Reich is vast, but full of thin spots, places where other colors leak in. Still, those leaks come with risk. You pass the Public Harmony Board. On it, notices are posted daily, commemorations, warnings, disappearances. Today, there's a name you almost recognize. A boy from your secondary level. Quiet. Always carried a notebook. Missing, it says. You know what that means. Unplugged. Not killed, killing makes martyrs. The right prefers to dissolve people. Remove their existence from the flow. Apartments are reassigned. School files vanish. Photos altered. Memories blurred with subtle pressure. Further along, you pass the Museum of World Integration. Its halls contain exhibits of what was a sanitized showcase of non-European cultures. Before assimilation, one display shows a Maasai warrior standing stiffly in a glass case under fluorescent light. He looks taxidermied. The plaque says, representative of pre-victory African tribal societies, now evolved into collective agricultural units. Another room features a mock-up of an Indian spice market. It smells vaguely of something burnt. All the jars are empty. A recorded voice chirps. Cultures come and go. Harmony stays forever. You walk faster. There's a woman outside the museum, selling artificial roses. They're made of recycled paper and sprayed with perfume that's been standardized by the Fragrance Bureau. Still, you buy one. Not because it smells good, it doesn't, but because she says, barely above a whisper, the blue ones mean I remember. Yours is blue. You take the long road home, past the World Broadcast Tower, a grotesque spiral that beams right propaganda across 5 continents. Some call it the needle, others the mouth. At the base is a fountain with iron doves. Their eyes glow red. The tower pulses with light, transmitting the daily anthem. From Berlin to Buenos Aires, from Moscow to Tokyo, we stand as one. You press your hands into your coat pockets, gripping the rose so tightly its paper petals crinkle. The world may seem conquered. But in stolen glances, whispered phrases, smuggled maps, and phantom jazz riffs, there's resistance. Not loud. Not yet. But there. Always there. You wake to the sound of engines. Not cars. Something lower, heavier, like the slow, groaning breath of machines that were never designed for comfort. You rise and step onto your balcony. From here, you can see the morning patrols forming, a half-dozen sleek black vehicles gliding in formation down the main boulevard. No sirens. Just that cold mechanical hum. Above them, in the gray early sky, a zeppelin floats past. Not the old, clunky kind from the history books, but a sleeker model, dark metal, curved like a shark. It casts a long shadow over the rooftops. You're used to it by now. These aren't tourist ships. They're part of the Luftüberwachung, the Reich's airborne monitoring system. Part drone, part blimp, all surveillance. They hover over public squares, record heat signatures, and beam propaganda films from their underbellies. This one is projecting a scene of children playing under a statue of Hitler. You've seen it before. Everyone has. The same loop, the same smile, the same safe and happy citizens. Recycled again and again. You head downstairs. Outside, the city is moving, methodical, efficient, quiet. Traffic flows like blood through veins, steady and controlled. The cars are all Reich standardized vehicles, rounded hoods, muted colors, no personal flair. You've heard that once, people used to customize their cars. Give them names. Decorate them with stickers. Now your car belongs to your job sector. You don't even own it. You just borrow it between shift rotations. The streets are spotless. Not because people clean them, but because there are machines for that. Rolling cubes that hum and spit steam, eating trash that barely exists. Littering is a criminal offense, but there's rarely anything to litter. Packaging is minimal, colorless, and edible when possible. You pass a public fuel station, though it's not for you. Civilian travel requires permits. Most people walk or take the tram. Fuel is reserved for military, medical, or high-clearance administrative travel. You pass a police post. The officers don't move, but you feel them watching. They wear dark gray uniforms with crimson accents, their helmets slightly reflective. No smiles. No chatter. Just presence. You've learned to walk like someone who doesn't mind being watched. Historians still argue whether the Reich's policing model evolved from traditional law enforcement, or from a deeper desire to create omnipresence. One paper you read, hidden in a banned archive, called it emotional occupation, the idea that people stop resisting not when they're beaten, but when they stop imagining anything else. You turn a corner into the residential sector. Here, the buildings are lower, older. The paint peels in ways that aren't technically illegal, just frowned upon. You pass an elderly man dragging a wheeled cart filled with metal scraps. He's part of the Volunteer Recycling Corps, a polite name for those too old to work but too aware to discard. He nods. You nod back. Neither of you speaks. Near the central square, you see the day's display, a column of military hardware lined up for public appreciation. Tanks, armored transports, sleek scout cycles. All unmanned, of course. The soldiers are likely watching through remote feed, sipping nutrient gel in some basement somewhere. Kids in brown youth division uniforms march past, saluting each machine. A loudspeaker explains the historical importance of technological dominance through racial excellence. You glance up at a street lamp. At the top, where the light glows dull yellow, a tiny lens blinks. Motion sensing. Thermal scanning. Audio logging. You step casually away. At the park, you find a small kiosk selling state newspapers and leisure-approved puzzles. You browse them briefly. Crosswords where the only allowed answers are party slogans, word searches where dissent is never an option. The vendor is friendly, in a rehearsed way. She thanks you for being a model observer. You leave without buying anything. Further on, a public tram hisses to a stop. A man exits holding a musical instrument case. That's rare. Instruments are heavily regulated. Only state compositions may be performed, and even those are assigned by sector. You wonder if he's brave, or just part of an official ensemble. You follow him for a block before he disappears into the concrete maw of a culture center. You continue down the street, passing beneath a bridge adorned with yet another banner. Observe, report, uphold. The words are stitched into your brain like background noise. You pause at a sculpture garden. It's quiet, even beautiful in a sterile sort of way. Angular statues of heroic workers, idealized mothers, obedient children, all facing upward. Always upward. You notice something strange. One statue is missing a finger. Broken off, cleanly. Maybe an accident. Maybe not. You lean in. There's a faint etching near the base, almost erased by weather. It reads, "This is not forever." You turn around quickly. No one saw. Or at least, no one is reacting. You walk home through an alley where the shadows hide more than light. A man passes you, muttering in a language you don't recognize. It's not German, or English, or Japanese. Maybe Hungarian. Maybe Yiddish. You're not sure. He's gone before you can ask. You realize, suddenly, how many layers of language once filled the air. How many dialects, accents, slang phrases and shared jokes have been muted by the Reich's machinery. Even how people walk has changed. Fewer arm swings. Shorter strides. Measured, restrained motion. Everything you do is logged, if not by a person, then by a pattern-matching algorithm designed to flag abnormal flow. At home, the air purifier kicks on automatically. You sit on the couch and let your eyes drift to the corner of the room, where the smart lamp watches you. It flickers briefly when it senses movement, pretending to be helpful. You pull the curtains closed anyway. You flick on the wall screen and scroll through the night's offerings. News segments, loyalty dramas, historical reenactments. A quiz show called Know Your Timeline, where the answers are always about how the Reich saved humanity from its own chaos. No comedy. No satire. Just performance. You settle on a channel playing approved instrumental music. A low, marching cello piece designed to soothe the obedient mind. And yet, as you drift into half-sleep on your couch, you hear a sound from the window. A quiet tapping. You wait. Then cautiously pull back the curtain. There's no one there. But on the windowsill sits a scrap of paper, taped to the glass. 4 words. Handwritten. Messy ink. We are still here. You shuffle forward, wrapped in the quiet hum of morning routine, toward the nearest market hall, the sprawling place where essentials are measured and dispensed under the watchful eyes of the party's appointed distributors. The building itself is a cold monument of steel and glass, its windows tinted to discourage peering eyes. Inside, a crowd of gray uniforms lines up with practiced patience, waiting their turn. Ration cards are stamped, scrutinized, exchanged like currency. You can feel the weight of the atmosphere, tension, fear, and the constant calculation of loyalty. Your number comes up, and you step forward, presenting your identification and ration booklet. The clerk, a thin-faced woman with a vacant stare, hands over a small bundle of packaged goods. A loaf of dense, flavorless bread, a plastic-wrapped hunk of synthetic protein, a small packet of salt, the luxury item of the week. You notice her hands tremble slightly as she gives you the package, but she quickly masks it behind a forced smile. The market hall is no place for weakness. In fact, any sign of vulnerability might end with a silent visit from the Sicherheitsdienst. Around you, people clutch their goods tightly, their eyes flicking nervously to the surveillance cameras perched like vultures on every corner. You catch a glimpse of a poster on the wall. Loyalty is the true currency. Spend it wisely. At the far end of the hall, a bulletin board lists the latest loyalty tier rankings, a system that determines your access to goods, jobs, and even housing. Your tier affects every aspect of your existence. It's an invisible hierarchy that keeps everyone under control without overt brutality, at least most of the time. The tiers are color-coded: gold, silver, bronze, and then unclassified. Falling out of favor means fewer goods, less access, and ultimately, disappearance. You think about the last time your tier was downgraded. A careless word overheard, a misfiled form. You had to borrow ration points from a coworker to avoid starvation that week. Outside, the streets hum softly with distant machinery, the ever-present reminder that the Reich's engine never stops. Even the air seems charged with the pressure to conform. You make your way to a communal workstation, a place where you can check your loyalty score and daily assignments. You scan your ID, and the screen flickers, displaying your current status, tier bronze. Not bad, but far from the top. The system suggests you enroll in additional community engagement programs to improve your standing. You nod silently and add it to your schedule, knowing full well that engagement often means unpaid labor or forced attendance at ideological seminars. Your thoughts wander to the underground markets, whispers of forbidden foods, rare spices, and even fresh fruit. Smuggled goods that arrive via shadowy networks, passed hand to hand in the dark corners of the city. You've never dared to try any, but you've heard the stories. That pineapple from the tropics, that rich, juicy apple from a distant orchard, luxuries in a world starved of variety. Historians still debate how much scarcity was manufactured as a control mechanism versus genuine resource depletion. Some argue that the Reich's obsession with order left no room for the messy realities of supply and demand. Others believe that self-imposed isolation policies led to famine in some regions, a silent crisis hidden beneath layers of propaganda. You pocket the small package and step back into the street. The sky is a dull slate, the kind that promises rain but never delivers. People pass by without a glance, heads down, burdened by invisible weights. As you walk, you notice a small child sitting on the curb, clutching a worn doll. It's one of those rare, handmade toys banned long ago but kept alive by whispered rebellion. The child looks up at you with wide eyes and offers a tentative smile. You smile back, a flicker of warmth in a cold world. For a moment, hope feels almost tangible. But then, the distant echo of boots on pavement breaks the spell. The patrols are coming. You tuck the package deeper into your coat and quicken your pace. The machinery of control never sleeps. Nightfall arrives with a heavy, mechanical sigh. The sky, once a muted gray, now deepens into an oppressive charcoal, blanketing the city in shadows that feel too still, too thick. Streetlights flicker on in precise synchronization, their pale yellow glow casting long, sharp lines on the cold stone pavement. Curfew looms. The daily decree is clear: all citizens must be indoors by 2000 hours sharp. Exceptions exist only for those with high clearance, or those unlucky enough to be on the patrols themselves. You hurry through the streets, careful to avoid eye contact with the few roaming security drones buzzing overhead, their red sensors scanning for any sign of life that moves too freely. At the edge of your block, the hum of a hidden jazz record slips from a cracked window. It's faint but unmistakable, the sultry wail of a saxophone, a rebellious melody in a world where music is supposed to be regimented and dull. You pause, caught between temptation and fear. Music, especially jazz, is banned. It's considered the sound of decadence, of disorder, of a past that the Reich wishes to erase. Yet here it is, leaking through cracks like a forbidden secret. You glance around quickly. No patrol in sight. Inside an alley, shadowy figures gather. They move cautiously, their whispers low and urgent. Among them, someone holds a battered gramophone, its needle dancing over a cracked vinyl. You recognize a few faces, neighbors who smile in daylight but have stories that don't fit the official narrative. They nod at you, an unspoken invitation. Tonight, the underground cabaret breathes life into a suffocating city. Inside the secret space, the air is thick with smoke and stolen laughter. Candles flicker against peeling wallpaper, and mismatched chairs surround worn tables. A singer, her voice raw and trembling, croons old American blues tunes, songs of pain and hope, loss and resilience. You sit in the back, heart pounding. The crowd is small but fierce, a community held together by shared defiance and fragile trust. A man taps a rhythm on a battered drum. Another plucks a battered guitar. The music breathes against the silence imposed by the regime. You catch a glance from a woman in the corner. Her eyes glisten with unshed tears, or maybe with dreams. She mouths the words silently as the singer hits a high note. You realize that for these few hours, the city is alive in a way it hasn't been in decades. But the night is fragile. Curfew enforcers could raid the place any moment. Snitches could report the gathering. The price for discovery is disappearance, or worse. You savor the music, knowing it's both a bomb and a rebellion. Outside, the city sleeps, or pretends to. Inside, a heartbeat endures. Historians still debate how widespread these underground networks were, and whether they could have blossomed into true resistance. Some argue they were mere pockets of nostalgia, others believe they were the seeds of future change. You know what you've heard in whispered corridors. Hope is a dangerous thing, but sometimes it's all that keeps you breathing. You find yourself walking down a sterile hallway toward a building that looks more like a fortress than a research lab. The walls are bare metal, polished so clean they almost reflect your face back at you. Inside, the air smells faintly of chemicals and something else, something metallic, like cold blood. Welcome to the Reich Scientific Advancement Center. A place where brilliance is weaponized, where humanity is measured not by kindness but by its usefulness to the state. You follow a guide through corridors lined with glass cases containing preserved specimens, some human, some not quite. The display tells the story of racial improvement, selective breeding, and genetic purification. Names of scientists, both revered and reviled, are etched into plaques. One name you recognize is Joseph Mengele, whose shadow looms large over the center's darkest chapters. The guide explains how the Reich invested heavily in hereditary science after the war. The goal? To create a population not just loyal but biologically superior. Laboratories work on editing genes, erasing undesirable traits, and boosting Aryan characteristics. The ethics of these experiments are not discussed. The results are promoted as undeniable progress. You enter a vast chamber filled with machines that hum and glow. Scientists in sterile uniforms monitor tanks holding children in suspended animation. These aren't ordinary children but test subjects, bred for specific genetic traits. You recall stories you've heard long ago, whispered in secret circles, tales of designed offspring, raised in isolation, trained for obedience and efficiency. Some say these children never see sunlight. The guide moves you on to a section dedicated to aerospace technology. Models of rockets and satellites line the walls. The Reich's space program is real, you're told, but its mission isn't exploration. It's surveillance, domination, and defense against enemies both seen and unseen. A poster proclaims, "From Earth to orbit, securing the future." You look out a window and imagine those rockets piercing the black sky, carrying instruments that watch every corner of the world, every whisper in the dark. Historians still argue whether the Reich's space ambitions were practical dreams or propaganda tools. Some documents suggest successful satellite launches as early as the 1950s. Others claim the program stagnated due to resource constraints and internal power struggles. Regardless, the idea that the state watches from above is very real. You exit the lab feeling both fascinated and unnerved. The science here is a double-edged sword, a promise of progress wrapped in a shroud of control. You wonder, silently, if humanity can ever truly thrive when its creators become its jailers. You feel the eyes before you see them. They're everywhere, hidden behind ordinary objects, woven into the very fabric of your daily life. Cameras disguised as lamps, microphones embedded in walls, even the tiniest cracks in the pavement sometimes contain sensors. The Reich surveillance state is a web spun so tightly, you can't help but be caught in it. Walking through the city, you're conscious of every glance, every movement. Neighbors nod politely, but their smiles don't reach their eyes. You know they could be informants, reporting the slightest deviation from the norm. In your apartment, the wall unit hums softly, listening. It picks up on tone, cadence, even hesitation. One slip of the tongue, one whispered question, and you might find yourself summoned for a loyalty review. Mail is no exception. Letters are scanned before delivery. Packages are opened and inspected. Even thoughts can't escape. You remember a friend who once joked about talking to the furniture to avoid being overheard. It was only half a joke. The Reich's psychological warfare is subtle but relentless. You keep your voice low, your words carefully chosen. You never mention banned topics. You never speak of forbidden ideas. Historians still argue about the psychological impact of constant surveillance. Some believe it broke spirits, creating obedient citizens. Others argue it fostered a deep undercurrent of mistrust and paranoia that simmered beneath the surface, waiting to boil over. You live in the in-between. The streets feel less like a community and more like a stage set. Everyone playing their part perfectly, yet hollowly. You catch a glimpse of a man in a long coat, eyes darting nervously. He pauses, looks around, then slips into a narrow alley. You wonder if he's one of the watchers, or someone watched. Your own steps quicken. At home, the smart lamp flickers again, its lens swiveling to track your movement. You wonder if it records your nighttime dreams. The concept of privacy has been eroded until it's nearly unrecognizable. You keep a small notebook hidden beneath a loose floorboard, filled with thoughts, fears, and memories you dare not share aloud. Sometimes you write in code. It's not just the state watching. It's the silence between neighbors, the invisible eyes that never blink. You live every moment aware that your freedom is measured by the absence of observation. And that might be the heaviest cage of all. The church you pass today wears a new face. Once a place of solace, it has been repainted in the stark colors of the Reich. The steeple no longer reaches for the heavens but points rigidly skyward like a spear. Swastikas replace stained glass saints, and hymns have been rewritten to honor the Führer's vision. You step inside cautiously. The pews are filled with uniformed faces, eyes fixed on the altar where the priest, a man in a sharply tailored gray robe, delivers a sermon not of salvation, but of submission. The words echo through the vaulted ceiling. Faith is strongest when it serves the state. The church is not a refuge from obedience but its instrument. Angels wear our uniform, and prayers are pledges to purity. You sit quietly, fingers clutching a worn prayer book, the one relic allowed in your possession. Even its pages have been carefully edited, holy passages crossed out or rewritten to align with party doctrine. The congregation stands and sings the new hymn, a somber, militaristic chant that chills your spine. No joy here, only duty and repetition. You remember the old stories your grandmother whispered before she disappeared, tales of secret congregations meeting under moonlight, of forbidden prayers and silent resistance. Faith, she said, was a weapon against tyranny. But now, the state owns faith. There are rumors of underground groups, people who still gather in basements, reading from banned scriptures, lighting candles not for the Reich but for something greater, something free. You've never seen them, but their existence is whispered in hushed tones. Historians debate whether the Reich sought to eradicate religion entirely or simply to harness it as a tool of control. Some documents suggest that after initial purges, the party reintroduced churches under strict regulation to pacify the masses. You stand as the service ends, joining the silent procession out into the cold street. Outside, a squadron of Youth Division members march past, their faces stern, their eyes unwavering. You slip away, the weight of the service pressing down on your chest. Faith, once a personal sanctuary, is now another avenue of obedience. And yet, beneath the surface, some hearts still beat with secret hope. Love in this world is a ledger entry, a transaction, a carefully calculated equation. You learned this early, when whispered crushes were replaced with bloodline reports and compatibility algorithms. Dating isn't spontaneous anymore. It's a state-sanctioned process called genetic pairing program. You submit forms, blood samples, psychological profiles, all analyzed to produce your ideal match. Chemistry is irrelevant, efficiency is paramount. You recall your own pairing. The form arrived one cold morning. A photograph, a dossier, a schedule for your first meeting in a sterile government facility. No flowers. No butterflies. Just paperwork and a handshake. Your partner, a woman named Ingrid, was punctual and composed. She smiled politely but never reached for your hand. Conversations were short, factual. The state's cameras monitored every interaction. The rare moments of tenderness were mechanical, rehearsed. Like actors reading lines in a play they didn't believe in. Interracial relationships are outlawed outright. Laws prohibit mixing of racial stocks, enforced with brutal efficiency. There are stories, rumors, of couples who dared to defy this edict. They vanished quietly in the night. Marriage licenses are granted only after strict vetting. The party calls it preserving purity. You wonder sometimes how it feels to choose whom you love, without fear. Children born outside approved unions are taken at birth, raised in state care. No questions asked? No goodbyes said? You once heard a whisper from a nurse who worked at a maternity ward: some infants are marked unsuitable and never leave the hospital. Love, in this regime, is a risk, a rebellion. Yet, in the shadows, small acts of affection bloom. A stolen glance, a hand briefly held, a whispered promise. You remember the time Ingrid touched your cheek, softly, just once, before pulling away. It was a moment suspended in a world of rules. Historians still debate whether such gestures were acts of true feeling or survival strategy. But you know, in your heart, they meant something real. You walk home under the pale streetlights, the weight of a love constrained heavy on your shoulders. In this world, love is a silent protest. And sometimes, that's enough to keep hope alive. The thought of escape flickers in your mind like a fragile candle against the relentless wind. You've mapped the borders, memorized secret routes, and listened to whispered stories from those who vanished into the forests, crossed frozen rivers, or boarded rusted ships bound for distant shores. The Finnish forests are rumored to be a sanctuary. Dense, cold, and unwelcoming, they're said to hide pockets of resistance fighters, people who've traded uniforms for camouflage, silence for defiance. You imagine the pine needles beneath your boots, the quiet rustle of wildlife, the starless sky above, far from the Reich's ever-watchful eyes. Argentina beckons as well. Known as a refuge for exiles and war criminals alike, its sprawling pampas are whispered to harbor secret communities, places where the Reich's reach fades. Rumors speak of smugglers and safe houses, coded messages passed along clandestine networks. Yet, escape is no simple feat. You'd have to leave behind everything familiar: your home, your family, the fragile security of routine. The unknown waits, cold, dangerous, and uncertain. You think of the stories, the few you've dared to listen to, of those who tried and never returned. Disappearances recorded only in the margins of censored newspapers. Sleep is elusive when plans are made in whispers. Your dreams are haunted by border patrols, patrol dogs, and icy waters. You wake with a start, heart pounding, wondering if your walls have ears. Still, the desire to breathe free lingers. You imagine crossing a dark forest, the branches scratching your face, the cold biting your skin. You imagine setting foot on a distant shore, the salt air sharp and unfamiliar. But you also imagine the loneliness. Starting over means losing everything you've known, even yourself. Historians debate whether mass escapes were feasible or merely legends passed down by desperate hope. Some suggest that the Reich's border fortifications, combined with aerial surveillance, made flight nearly impossible. Others argue that small, determined groups managed to slip through cracks in the system. You lie awake, weighing freedom against safety. And somewhere in the dark, a single thought keeps returning. Maybe escape isn't the only way to resist. Maybe resistance lives in quiet acts, in unspoken dreams, in the simple act of holding on. You grow old in this world, the polished dystopia where everything is spotless, controlled, and unchanging. The years pass like the steady ticking of a clock, precise and predictable. The city remains unchanged, the buildings no newer, the skies no clearer. You watch as generations come and go, their faces sharper, their steps quieter. The machines hum louder, the surveillance grows more intricate, but the spirit, if you can call it that, remains suspended, frozen in time. There is no war now, only the threat of war. No change, only the illusion of movement. No silence, only the constant low hum of systems running at full capacity. You walk the same streets, see the same murals, hear the same slogans. Order above all. Strength through unity. The future is pure. But beneath the surface, a quiet fatigue has settled over the city like a fog. People smile less often, and when they do, it feels rehearsed. You realize the true victory of this empire is not its borders or its armies, but the silence it imposes on the human soul. Yet, even in this stifling stillness, something flickers, a memory of what once was, a whisper of what could be. As you lie down one last time, the walls around you softened by the gentle hum of the night, you feel a faint hope, a breath of rebellion carried on a whispered lullaby. The world the Reich built is vast and terrifying, but it is not eternal. Because the human heart, no matter how tightly bound, always seeks freedom. Always dreams of a dawn beyond the shadow. And with that thought, your eyes close, and peace begins to fall. Now, as your breathing slows and your mind drifts, imagine the city's steel towers melting into mist, the banners dissolving like morning fog. Feel the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders, the quiet hum turning soft and distant, like a lullaby from another time. Know that while history's dark paths can haunt us, they also remind us of resilience, the fragile, beautiful strength to dream, to hope, and to change. Rest now, in the gentle embrace of night, with the comfort that even in the darkest places, light finds a way. Sleep well. Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams.